This is Jose from Mexico, who wants to talk about the scandal and controversy around Miss Universe. Jose, you are on the air with Megan, Christy, and Claire.
Hey, guys.
Hey, inform us.
Yeah.
Please.
What scandal? I'm sorry, I don't know about it.
Maybe
Oh,
we
really?
don't cover pageants as well.
Yeah, not my shtick.
I really thought I actually thought this program was going to talk about it. But, yeah, so...
Oh, yeah, she's got a
it's-
kid or she's married or something. What is it? Yeah, I think I do.
No, it's about she is an openly transgender participant.
Oh.
Yeah, she's being shitted about it. So, yeah, I heard about this a couple of days ago because I don't really keep up with those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
But, so I've heard it firstly for, the memes that are being shared about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they are just full with transphobia. They are just like nonstop transphobia about it. And they are and actually even pretty misogynistic because even the other participants that are, that are cis women, they say like, that they disagree about it. They think just cis women should participate and trans
She
women
is a
should.
woman. Mm-hmm. Damn
Yeah,
it.
they don't recognize her.
Well,
as
they're
a woman.
stupid.
They think.
Yep, they're behind the times.
Yeah. So there was a lot of debate about it, and some people actually said like, well, what is stopping men from becoming women and winning all of this contest?
Isn't that
And,
every little
like,
boy's
if you
dream?
wasn't-
To grow up and be Miss Universe? It's so common.
Yeah,
There's a
like-
kit in the aisle at Target for little boys. It's in the boy part right next to the Power Rangers and
Yeah,
shit.
Army Men.
Right.
And,
you got
Stretch
your
Armstrong.
Miss Universe starter kit, right? It's what the
And
fuck is wrong with people? God, the sky is falling.
I remember before this was even a thing, like before transgender was even really on the radar, I remember having a couple classmates go out for Halloween, which is coming up, by the way. Everybody dress up. I already have my costume. But who dressed up as older women, right? And their parents thought it was just funny. But you could tell that they really liked
We're vaguely
it.
concerned.
Well, not the parents.
The parents
the
were on
kids.
board.
The parents were on board because they just thought it was like stupid and hilarious. But the kids,
That was what they really wanted to do.
they wanted to do
They
it.
were testing the waters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Not
Yeah,
surprising.
so
I
really,
was very comfortable
it
at my Powder Puff football game as a cheerleader, which turned out to be very significant later on in life. I guess these moments...
You do you.
Right, but we present it in this sort of like, it has to be like a joke. It has to be a
Right.
funny
It has to be a trope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The madness of, the idea that women play football. Like, we
Well-
have to really accentuate it in that way in order to feel comfortable being like, haha, I would never, but like, I'm glad I get to. But haha, isn't this so funny?
Well, I think also in this context, it's important to bring in the term TERFs,
Oh, Lordy.
which is, would you disagree, though?
Oh, they're
exclusionary
awful.
radical
Yeah.
feminist.
Trans exclusionary
Exclusionary
radical feminists. And I think it's important to bring that into the conversation because since we're talking about Miss Universe and a trans person being up for the title of Miss Universe, those feminists who think that trans women have no place in the movement, that's personally, for myself, that's bullshit.
I think the Miss Universe pageant is bullshit. I wish the whole
There's
thing would
that
go away.
too. There's that too.
Yeah, and I'd
But-
also like to acknowledge before it gets away from us that
Yeah.
as hard as women have it, trans
Trans women.
folks, women and men,
Yeah.
have it way, way harder.
Oh,
the
my
violence,
God.
I have somewhere on here, I have to put my eyeballs on, stats
For trans women, not only do they have to deal with women's issues, but they have to deal with being trans on top of women's issues.
And frankly, homophobia, which is
Yeah,
not
there's that
necessarily like an appropriate application of that particular form of hatred. Not that there is an appropriate one.
I was gonna
but
say.
Nevertheless, they often find themselves on the bitter end of that. And the devastating fact is that when we look at assault, when we look at murder, when we look at rape, when we look at all of these different things, trans women of color, suicide are devastatingly affected in ways that the rest of the population just isn't. You know, I mean, it is something like 20 times more likely that a trans woman of color will
assaulted.
attempt suicide.
Oh.
That as well. I don't mean to misrepresent statistics that I don't directly have in front of me, but the reality is there are people among us,
Women.
that are suffering in ways that the rest of us just aren't. And I think that to bring it all back, that could be true whether we were talking about trans women, whether we were talking about gay men, whether we were talking about starving people in Ethiopia. I mean, I don't want to get so broad as to lose a focus, but I do want to suggest that as
Whatever
we're...
title or whatever label.
Yeah. There are people of different stripes. And so when we're talking about Me Too, when we're having this conversation about the way we're treating women specifically in America, yes, there are people who have it worse. And yes, men are affected by the Me Too movement in sometimes negative ways. But all of that really only serves to steal the spotlight, to steal the microphone from those that really, really need it and that could benefit from us taking 5 goddamn seconds to actually pay attention to the billions of women across the world that are being treated in unfair and unjust ways.
I have a statistic for you.
Oh,
Hit me.
please.
Yes. This demographic is twice as likely to have experienced sexual violence than any other demographic. Twice as likely. Can you guess what it is?
Trans women.
Transgender.
Nope. Transgender is worse than women in general, but this is twice than
Cis
both
women,
of
yeah.
them.
Gay?
Both. No. Native American women.
Yeah.
Holy.
That's right.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
On the reservation, or on reservations, the
Suicide rates, alcoholism,
is
all of
high,
those are
and the
very,
actual
very high.
conviction rate is.
You want to talk about
extremely
disenfranchisement.
Disenfranchisement, yeah, absolutely.
I just,
Yeah.
we really screwed up.
I've seen more than my fair share of documentaries, and I can count myself lucky that I am a couple generations removed from that particular situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, anyway, yeah. So the Me Too thing, if you were saying before about how it's, losing focus, yeah, because we're looking more broadly and starting to discover stuff. We're pulling back the veil, as it were. And as I've posted on my Facebook thing, it's not worse. It's the same. We're just seeing it, and we need to hold each other tight and keep working. Take care of each other, but be brave if you can. I mean, some people it's too dangerous, but
I mean, for those, the most I can say to many of you out there is what I have tattooed on my arm. Which Claire knows.
I love it.
Which is just keep swimming. Which is Dory from Finding Nemo. And is just keep swimming. That is my mantra. I will freely admit that I suffer from major depressive disorder.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. And I take medication, but of course that doesn't fix it all of the time. And for those of you out there who are having a horrible time, We love you.
Take care of yourself. Do some self-care.
Self-care. And just keep swimming. For those of you out there who are already swimming and feel like maybe you can take on a little bit more, speak up. It helps everyone in the movement. Not just in the movement, it helps everyone in the world. Claire, can you take this?
I think on the last Godless Bitches that we filmed, Tracy Harris is just so incredibly articulate. I could never hope to be as articulate as she is. But she spoke about the many ways that people can experience everything that's been going on and how you can react to it and doing the best you can, essentially. I'm paraphrasing heavily. The whole Kavanaugh thing set me back on my ass for a few days. When Trump was elected, I cried for a week. But then I started doing stuff. And you just get back in there when you can. And don't feel bad if you can't. Somebody else will pick up the baton and do some stuff while you're doing self-care.
There is no timer on your need to get back into the fight. When you feel you are ready, we are here to support you. Despite whatever goes on in the world, we believe you, and we will support you.
Yeah, and with all of that, I would only say to the men in the audience that, as and transitioning to talking about next is known to quote, women aren't asking for any exception because of their sex, simply that men be willing to remove their boots from women's necks.
And biased.
It's not a matter of elevating women to being above men. It's not about trusting what she said over what he said. It's about actually listening to what she has to say and recognizing that the system that we have created is really not prone to give both of those voices equal treatment. In a perfect world, yes, we could sit down and have an audience and let a man and a woman can have a equal debate about what might have occurred or a specific situation or a particular policy or any of these things. But the reality is, even if that table is set and even if those chairs are seated in by a man and a woman, the man's voice is going to sound different because of the context, because of the power, because of the situation that he's in and where he's speaking from. And so that being the reality, I'm not telling men to shut up. I'm not telling men to take everything that a woman says as truth. I'm simply saying that if you want to truly hear everybody is equal, you have to recognize that the table is not currently set for that. And so making some provisions to genuinely create an actual situation of equality is to make a pretty radical change to the way that we've been doing things so far.
Yep.
And I would suggest, just as a note, if you are introduced to a situation where you are asked to make a judgment, take the female's testimony and put a man's voice on it and ask, rather than what was she wearing, ask what was he wearing, rather than asking where was he at that time of night, or rather than asking where was she at that time of night, ask where was he at that time of night. Ask why was he doing that thing.
How many drinks had he had?
I was about to say.
Sorry.
No, I was about to say, what were the number of drinks that he had?
Yeah.
What club was he at? Replace all of those pronouns and ask yourself, what do I believe?
Yep.
And then ask yourself, is it fair? I think that's the most important thing to take away from this episode is it fair? The answer, I think we can all agree, is no.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody for joining us as we have this conversation. I want to thank everybody who called in, especially Jose, who I know we kind of cut off there at the end as we were wrapping up. So we really do appreciate y'all joining us here every week, particularly when you call in. If there was something we didn't get a chance to respond to or something that we didn't get a chance to talk about, please feel free to shoot us an email. We'd love to answer that either over the internet or even on air. As we may. And we'd love to see you next week. Megan will be out, and so I'll be joined by...
I will be out.
...the wonderful Serafina Smith, as well as a wonderful third guest host, Michelle, who will be joining us. So she'll be ready to answer any of your questions about sexual health and gender. We're going to be looking at...
Grab bag.
Yeah, it's just sort of a grab bag of options as Michelle will be here as a registered nurse for any of your sexual health questions. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you then. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Bring all of the pus and ooze questions.
Yeah, all of your gory questions. Let's go ahead and get those out of the way.
Hey, and thank you to...
And Christy will be in my chair next week.
Dead center.
Hey.